At the end of Luke chapter 5, there's the discussion going on with John the Baptist's disciples and the Pharisees and Jesus about the validity of fasting. And Jesus concludes with a parable of the new wine and the old wineskins. It's a very familiar story. Let me just read it for you. No one tears a piece out of a new garment to patch an old one. Otherwise, they will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the new wine will burst the skins, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, new wine must be poured into new wineskins. And that's actually the end, I think, of what Jesus wanted to say, but in very typical fashion, Jesus tacks on one other final comment in verse 39. And no one after drinking old wine wants the new, for they say, the old is... And then that's the word that's difficult to translate. The NIV has the old is better. Other people have that the old is good. Now, what's going on? Well, the basic meaning of the passage is clear, don't they? The new wine is Jesus and his teaching. The old wineskins are the Jewish forms of religion that can't hold, can't contain, that have to change because of Jesus' new teaching. But there's something, if you don't mind the pun, there's something intoxicating about the old. There's something about old wine that they say it's good or it's better, and they're gonna hang on to it, and they're gonna resist the new wine of Jesus's teaching. Now, in one sense, the statement is tautological. Of course, old wine is better than new wine, all right? And the longer, up to the limit, I guess, the longer wine is aged, the better it becomes. So in one sense, the statement is true. But in a much more important sense, it's not true, because old wine isn't better than Jesus's new wine. Okay, so at first it sounds a little tautological. Well, the old is good. But this is where the analogy breaks down in the parable, which is not that unusual. And the question is, what did Jesus mean when he said, the old, you will say that the old is good? Now, when Jesus says that they say that the old wine is good, he's using the comparative form of the adjective Christos, and it just means good. And in fact, BDAG is one of the definitions in relative to wine, that it's fine wine or good wine. So that's the normal use of the word. And if what Jesus is saying, they're saying, is that the old is good, in one sense, at some level, sure, yeah. Especially the Old Testament form of religion is a good thing. It's been superseded, it's been fulfilled in Christ, but it was good. But if you translate it like the NIV does as better, that the old is better, then a different thing is being said. They're saying that the old wine of Judaism is not just good, it's actually better than what Jesus is bringing. So there's a significant difference in meaning. There is the comparative form of the adjective kraton. You can also, with two taus, and with variants have it with two sigmas. They spelled it different ways. But in the koine, the whole distinction between the positive and the comparative and the superlative form of the adjective is breaking down. And so you can have positives used as comparatives, which would give us better with Christos. But see, they're two different things. Is the old wine good, or is it better than what Jesus is offering? So the ESV and the NRSV go with the old is good. The NIV goes with the old is better. What's interesting is the translation good enough. That both the NASB and the NET translate the old is good enough. And in typical fashion, the NASB italicizes enough because it's the word that's being inserted. But they're both saying the same thing, that Jesus is saying that Judaism would say, oh, the old is good enough. It gets to a very interesting point, is that when you try to write what was spoken, there's so much that's lost. Because I can say, well, the old is good. And you understand what I'm saying is, the old is not only good, but it is better than what you have. Or if you could say, the old is good. You're not making a comparative with the new wine of Jesus. And that's brought out with the translation, good enough, right? And so I always think that when you translate, you really should say it out loud, because there's so many intonations possible when we say these words that it's really hard to carry into the written word. So how would you say this out loud? That they say the old is good, or it's good, good enough. Well, the old's better. I mean, it's really interesting, the nuances that come with the spoken word. But you have the positive and the comparative form of the adjective and context, and you just have to make up your decision as to what Jesus is saying. I think that for most people, the old is intoxicating. The old ways of doing things get a grip on our hearts, and we just don't want to change. It's not a spiritual maturity issue. It's partly my personality. As I invite change, I like change. I'm always looking for new ways to do things. But for most people, the old really gets a grip on people, and they don't want to let it go. And you can see it in churches that they're dwindling in numbers, they're dwindling in effectiveness, but man, they are not going to change anything that they're doing. They're just going to stick to it till the doors are shut. You can see it in seminaries, that more and more seminaries are failing, and more you get people graduating from seminaries that are not prepared for ministry. Just ask your pastor. And you'll see that there's real issues in seminary education, but there's this grip on them that I'm not going to change. This is the way I've always done it. And you even see it with people, how people keep doing the same thing over and over again. They may be expecting something different, but they just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's just amazing to me how the grip that which is old and that which is traditional has on people, not just the Jewish religion as opposed to Jesus' new wine, but just in general. Now, just because something's new doesn't make it better. I've gone down a lot of new paths and they're dead ends. Well, okay, I don't care. But just because something is new doesn't make it better. So that's kind of the other side of that statement. But I think what I wanted to leave you with is never underestimate the power of the old, the power of the traditional, the way in which things have always been done. If you're ever in a church meeting and someone says, well, we've never done it that way, that's a real danger signal that the old forms of the religion has got its grips, its claws into the person. And that can really be a problem. When we merged the two churches that we did when I was pastoring, one of the rules that we passed is we can never say, well, we've always done it this way. One of the churches was been around for many years. The other church was relatively new. And we were forming a new church. And I knew that it would be hard to break the old traditions. And so the elders agreed, we are never going to use as an argument, well, we've never done that before, because we're a brand new church. So we kind of headed this off at the past. But Jesus comes in. He's the fulfillment of the messianic hope. He has new wine. He never underestimated. Don't you ever underestimate the power of someone who thinks that the old is good or good enough.